Welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. It's no secret that the rapid evolution of technology has disrupted the way brands engage with their customers. And at the helm of this tech is Meta, the powerhouse operating Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and the Metaverse. To know more, Melt is in conversation with Sandeep Bhushan, Director and Head of Global Marketing Solutions for India at Meta. So let's talk marketing, Metaverse, measurement, and more as we get ready to melt with Sandeep Bhushan. Sandeep, your company Meta is literally named after the Metaverse. So how do you define the Metaverse at Meta?
Great to be back at Melt again. So the Metaverse is really an ability for all of us to connect in the virtual space. And in definition terms, really, it's about us being in the virtual space together and being able to collaborate. So therefore, the principles are being there, so immersively together, collaboration, doing things together, and interoperability, which basically means multiple devices can log into that same space, so many of us can join together.
Right. So immersion, collaboration, and interoperability. Now, here's a question that many people are a little embarrassed to ask. Maybe marketers are among them. Sandeep, where exactly is the Metaverse?
Yes, so I think that's a good question. The Metaverse is in the virtual space.
Okay.
So yeah,
Can I
instead
log into www.metaverse.com?
No, so you will log into a particular URL, but what you don't need is your car and your keys. That's what I'd like to confirm.
What are some of the opportunities the Metaverse is going to unlock for the consumer?
If you build further on the principle that we just spoke of, that we can be together in a space, we can collaborate, and the space can have any context that we choose to have there, multiple use cases open up. Education, medicine, or even basic communities coming together are all possible. To illustrate, for example, already the ability to physically engage allows for example, games, exercise, shared physical activity. So, for example, GTA, one of the more popular video games, is going to be on Metaverse. And what that does is therefore a deeply immersive experience, or a Beat Saber, for example. So it's a simple gaming analogy. Byju's Future School today, for example, is one of the partners that's building for the Metaverse to bring education to life. And you could argue that while Metaverse can solve the challenge of not being together, it could also, on the positive side, create possibilities that are not possible in the real world. So multiple use cases for users, consumers, and society as we get there and we're on the journey now.
Sandeep, you've previously said that Meta aids discovery for brands. Can you elaborate on that? What's in it for the marketer, the Metaverse?
Yeah. So again, let's go further. If the ability to be together in a context is really the promise of Metaverse, it's applicable to every part of our life and our social connections. Marketing is one of those. And every time a consumer can interact with your product or interact with the experience, you move the consumer one step closer in affinity to you. So recently, for example, we saw the illustration of Wendyverse, which is Wendy's
The
QSR,
chain, the restaurant chain.
the QSR chain, created this experience in the Metaverse where your avatar can interact with all of the excitement and the joy around food and with others. Just a starting step on what that immersion can be illustrative of. All the way to, for example, take the simplest example of AR tryouts. Augmented reality tryouts are happening across multiple levels of sophistication, but the principle remains that you can access a product, try it on without any logistical constraints. And that use case is already here. So therefore, there's a continuum of use cases, but fundamentally being together and creating in a context is the opportunity for all marketers. And that, by the way, can help you across the chain, not just in discovery, but in reconsideration and also in purchase.
I'm going to belabor this point a little more because I think it's important for both marketers and consumers. We've heard of games like Second Life, where you can have this virtual avatar, which is 24/7, and there are brands in Second Life, there's real estate in Second Life, there's marketing in Second Life. So is Second Life a metaverse, part of the metaverse, or is the metaverse that you talk of completely different from Second Life?
You know, I'd place the context a bit differently. Fundamentally, where you're together and you're creating possibilities of what the community together can do, that's a very, very large canvas. And we spoke of anything from physical fitness to education, retail to even an in-office experience. Illustrate with an example. Nestle, for example, recently ran a immersion of their employees with their products on the pet food side. So this is about me going deeper into my organization to understand a part of the organization, right? In the metaverse. So we're starting from real life challenges or opportunities that we want to solve and bringing communities together in the virtual space. So you could say that this is a very, very critical place to solve many, many pieces across the social dimension. So it's not just in the space of light engagement, for example, or enjoyment. It can solve multiple social opportunities.
So it's beyond just a 3D game, a 3D immersive game. It's a whole world that you can actually work in, you can collaborate in, you can practice medicine in. Okay, let's change gears back from the metaverse to the regular universe. Now, Meta had set up a Grow Your Business Hub for SMEs in 2021, and that featured a summit and a playbook. But tell us, what are some of the obstacles that SME face when they create an FB account or an Insta account and they want to do business through that?
I think the largest driver of businesses coming on to digital fundamentally is that consumers have all moved to digital. So in India, you can argue more than 500 million people today are accessing the internet for a variety of services, and businesses want to be able to access their consumers there. That's the starting point. Second, we also saw over the last couple of years the intent of consumers to engage with businesses, and we call that digital influence, increased very, very significantly. And categories gone to 70-80%, right? And so newer categories such as grocery in the context of internet, it's up by 20-30 points as well. So this is what the small businesses have seen. So that's one. Their opportunity is to find these consumers where they can service them. And that's why differentially small businesses win on the internet, right? So for example, pin code targeting next door is possible today, all the way to, let's say, a white hat junior building a franchise across the world, starting from nothing, and in 3 years building a global business that eventually we know is now part of Byju's, right? So the ability to go across the world and to your next door neighborhood, depending on your category and your ambition, now exists. How does the journey start? The journey starts, of course, from a page you can create on Instagram or Facebook, or have a WhatsApp for business account, which, for example, just within India, we have 15 million WhatsApp for business accounts today, moving their business ahead with the use of WhatsApp and conversational commerce. Once they've done that, I think then the next level question is, what is the efficient way to acquire consumers? What is the efficient way to deliver their goods and do customer service, right? If you were to take that flow. So we are very focused on 2 dimensions right now. One is, of course, helping them find the consumers. The other is to support them in their learning on what to do on digital, and also supporting them further, for example, on working capital, where we've run programs, as we do even now, to help them, for example, find loans at competitive prices. So the whole range of support that business need, we're certainly trying to find support
for each
in each one of those. Yeah.
Speaking of finding consumers where they are, Sandeep, the rural internet population is growing quite fast, and according to some data, faster than the urban population. How are you helping marketers acknowledge this shift and take advantage of this shift?
Yeah. I think it is now known that internet is not an urban phenomenon. I think that realization is dawned. At the moment, we're talking of beyond 500 million people in India on the internet, and the numbers just growing further and further. We know we are talking well beyond urban. And let me give you a very simple case study. Recently, a brand such as Eno, which is a very mass brand, went on to Instagram, used Chacha Chaudhary, the iconic Indian comic character, where the Pran publishing house, which owns the rights for that, worked with the brand and Instagram to put out narratives on how Sabu and Chacha Chaudhary need, post, let's say, a delicious meal, right? So the reach is there. It's only about writing the idiom for that audience. And Eno post this, for example, reported significant sales growth, I think upwards of 20%, post this rural focused exercise. So therefore, the audience exists. They are equally in need for connecting to their interests and their passions, as also to businesses, which was the insight we started with on the SMB or the small business play. The question is businesses to get quickly ready to talk to them in the language and the idiom where their consumers are.
And no conversation about the consumer can be complete without a question on the D2C space. I think it must be the most buzziest D2C market in the world.
Yeah.
From where you sit, what trends are you seeing on your apps with regard to D2C space?
I think I want to make the bridge on D2C and the other piece you said about rural. Fundamentally, consumption is widening across the country. First of the internet, and then of with discretionary incomes rising over the many years of goods. On that India side, on the deep rural side, one of the interesting data points, which is very interesting, is when you look at Reels, we have a large program called Born on Instagram, where lots of creators and influencers are tooled in terms of what's the latest. And 2/3, for example, come from tier 2, tier 3 towns. So the expression is turning into appealing to the massive audiences that all of India provides, rural included, right?
The creators and the audiences,
That's
both from
So the
tier 2,
language,
tier 3.
the communication, the idiom, the reach, all of it is there, right? Place now business after business on top of this, right? D2C is basically a phenomenon where a brand is trying to disintermediate all channels to be able to talk to the consumer,
Yep.
right? The starting point is the ability to go across the world. So D2C, if you take a brand like Two Brothers, which exports organic food products all the way across the world, dozens of countries, to again reaching an audience which is next door in rural is now possible. So D2C phenomenon starts by the fact that the audiences exist and they can control where and which consumer they want to reach. If you build further, therefore, multiple brands, it's a buzzy space. I think what D2C is fundamentally doing is saying that because internet and platform like ours allow for segmentation of the market, you don't have to be at that least common denominator, pink color soap, for example, right?
It can be different things to
You can be
different things to different people, if you
So
like.
segmentation traditionally meant losing the rest of the audience. Today, segmentation is merely a way of aggregating audience in smaller chunks. That's actually what's powering D2C. And therefore, when you go closer, you will see very interesting products that are niche positions, but they cover the whole market. So D2C is happening across, and therefore, when you look at brands such as Mamaearth, where they are using D2C to build their brand, and we spoke about Mamaearth last year when they put out some results. We saw significant sales growth as they used the platform, all the way to brands such as ITC, the largest and the most traditional of marketers, with massive legacy brands, again driving growth through D2C on our platforms, and from a last member, 4x growth on sales as they push their D2C agenda. So it's happening across every category, across segments, and appealing to audiences, whether rural, urban, or global.
Let's move on to Instagram now, Sandeep. Where do you see future growth coming for the platform?
Instagram is really where expression is unleashed, right? So when you look at tools such as Reels or Stories, they allow for expression in ways that we didn't even imagine was possible, right? I think that's one. Instagram is also the place where we chase our passion and our interests, right? So build these two together, ability to express in infinitely exciting ways, ability to follow passions, creates a very rich space, which is therefore moving fast in terms of what is possible. So for example, brands, just to come back to the previous question of brands, a Spotify playlist, around Holi, done through Reels, becomes a top 50 during that season. Because they are playing on the phenomenon that expression around a cultural moment allows them to play that. So I think Instagram keeps moving forward as the home for expression. It's giving birth to creators, like we said, a bulk of them from tier 2, tier 3 India, expressing in languages and music, which is pan-India, and therefore tapping into interests of audiences, some of them as brands, and some of them even in broader areas, whether it's finance or cooking or whatever interest may be. So those come together on Instagram.
So Sandeep, you have Stories, Reels, IGTV, Facebook Live. How do marketers make sense of this plethora of video options? What do they choose, and what should their basis for choosing be?
So there are two axes to look at how to make a choice on our platforms. One is, where is your audience at? You may argue that my audience is on a particular platform, and certain formats may be more conducive to be used on that platform, right? That's one. The other is where Facebook itself will allow a marketer to place a set of assets and find the right audience with the right asset. So at the core of the engine is the ability to serve the right asset to the consumer. So for example, if you accessed Stories, the ad that will be served will be in the context of Stories. Or if you access Reels, the ad that will be served will be in the context of Reels. So one is that the platform will make a choice. And the second is, where do you think you can tell your story more interestingly? The platform allows you that flexibility.
Let's move to WhatsApp now. WhatsApp, of course, continues to be the dominant platform for personal messaging across India. But tell us about WhatsApp for business. What's happening there? You said 15 million users there.
Yeah.
What's happening there?
I think all of us instinctively have moved to WhatsApp as a primary source of communication. First, one-on-one, then in groups and families through calls, videos, messages, and now also with businesses. And through the pandemic, we saw how critical WhatsApp was for all kinds of interactions. 15 million businesses today are on WhatsApp for business, right? Globally, 1 billion people engage with messaging with businesses, right? So it's massive scale. And we know that in India, it's all around us. What we've done over the last few months is put out the suite of products that business can now use to get greater effectiveness in their business objectives. Just to illustrate, for example, the WhatsApp for Business app allows for basic CRM to be done off the WhatsApp app, right? We believe many businesses can use that to push their business agenda across various cohorts of consumers. Just this week, we've announced the cloud API for WhatsApp, which will allow businesses to build off, businesses and developers to build off our WhatsApp platforms very, very quickly in the quest for their business goals. So WhatsApp is just coming through. Early case studies on how businesses are now using that for driving objectives are showing up. And these use cases are across all sectors, all aspects of the funnel. So WhatsApp for Business is now here.
And it's not just for small businesses. WhatsApp for Business is for small businesses, medium, as well as the big giants.
Absolutely. For example, the banking use case. Today, you can see many banks are today talking to you with basic banking services on WhatsApp. So you can take the largest institutions in the world of business, banks, to the smallest neighborhood grocer who's talking to you. So every business, fundamentally, conversation can aid a business journey is the core insight. And the conversation, in fact, starts very interestingly, even on Facebook or Instagram. So you can see an ad on Facebook, Instagram, and click to a conversation, whether on WhatsApp or Instagram or Facebook, and continue the conversation. So fundamentally, what we're doing is taking away that barrier that we are across a digital barrier. I'm not sitting next to you, but I do have a question. We're able to then cut that barrier and then continue the conversation even post-sale.
Sandeep, you're also a special invitee to ASCI, the Advertising Standards Council of India. In your view, do we need to redefine the code of conduct for online advertising in India?
The advertising codes are an evolving area across the world. At Meta, we've been very clear on what the ad rules and policies are. And we've, in fact, put out very clear community guidelines, which is what you and I can do today as consumers. We also put out very clear ad guidelines. And our ad guidelines in many cases are more stringent than any self-regulation that is being suggested. So for example, on our platform, we don't allow before-after ads in terms of physical appearance. Payday loans have never been on our platform, for example. So we've been very conscious that there are areas of advertising that just should not be. And we are well ahead, therefore, in making sure the consumer experience remains good. So we are keen to share our learnings and see what we can do together in industry to bring them more institutionally all around.
You've also spoken about something called responsible innovation. Could you tell us what is responsible innovation and what do marketers need to know about this?
See, fundamentally, I think we are in an age where across every dimension of, let's say, the digital experience, there is greater awareness for every aspect of the digital interaction, starting, for example, with privacy. So how do we build privacy-first products is the key. For example, as early as 3 years ago, you started to see, why am I seeing this ad? On every ad that you saw on Facebook, you could click and see, why am I seeing this ad? You could then choose to switch off those variables if you didn't want to be targeted with those ads, right? So therefore, fundamentally, for example, building privacy into all our digital offerings is one part, for example, of how we can responsibly drive digital adoption and yet create a very safe space for expression and interaction.
Sandeep, we're almost at the end of the interview. We can't end the interview without talking about measurement. Internet platforms promise effectiveness, efficiency, and super ROI because every action, every reaction can be measured. But the problem is this generates too much data. It generates a lot of data. How do marketers separate the wheat from the chaff in this mountain or this lake of data?
Yeah. This is something that I think we've rarely invested time and money in terms of figuring what the best solution will be. As late as 3 months ago, we worked with BCG to bring out an industry view on what needs to be done. And we're fortunate to have virtually every key global and Indian measurement partner be a part of that thinking, right? So you've got everyone from Nielsen to AppsFlyer, BCG and us putting that piece out. And what are the fundamentals there? The fundamentals are, one, measurement of outcomes is more important than measurement inputs. The challenge today in the industry coming together is, how do you think of a display ad versus a TV ad versus a 30-second video? And the answer to that is, actually they cannot be on the same plane. The plane that will be is whether the dollar invested in either of these moved a business priority, whether it's brand salience or sales, right? That's the nudge we want to make for the industry. That's one. And the second is, we also realize that advertisers or any business is at a stage of sophistication which is unique to them. Some have large departments that can do some of this work, some don't. So we've also put out that basis the stage of sophistication, what decisions need to be taken. So in fact, I'd urge our viewers to go and look that report up. It's prescriptive in terms of what are the outcomes we should be chasing, what are the tools, and it's signed off by virtually every player in the industry who's been thinking about this.
Sandeep, to end the interview, a personal question. How much time do you spend online?
Well, every time I'm not offline, I'm online. So actually, the question could be asked in reverse. All the utility apps are there. Our lives, whether we are traveling or entertaining ourselves or reading, we are on the internet in some way or the other. And of course, connecting with communities and passions, which is what we do on our platforms. So a mix of, I think, all of these things do end up being a pretty large part of our lives, certainly mine.
Do you have a virtual avatar? And if you do, can you show us what it looks like?
Well, yeah. On Facebook.
Are you like a warrior with a flying wizard warrior?
No, I'm grey-haired, even as an avatar. So I'm trying to be as close to my persona, certainly. So yeah, so on Facebook, you can see my avatar on Facebook.
All right, you can check out Sandeep Bhushan on his Facebook avatar. Sandeep Bhushan, thank you very much for talking to us.
Pleasure. Thank you.
That's a wrap on this episode. You can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready to Melt, or simply log on to readytomelt.com. If you'd like to follow me, as always, it's @Suvenk on Twitter. Till next week, goodbye and thanks for watching.